Okay, Roland Schoeman, welcome back to my podcast, man. How you doing?
Brett, always an honor. Honored to be back a second time. It's been a while.
It has, and we talked about some stuff on the first one. If people want to go back and check that out, they can. But we're going to talk about you on this one and your career. I mean, you've had one of the most successful careers any sprinter's ever had in the history of swimming. For many years, you've been one of the top sprinters in the world. Uh, Certainly a great ambassador for your country, South Africa, and the things that you've done coming out of that country and the things that you continue to do for that country. So, I mean, I just wanted to get you back on and really talk about your career. And I have some talking points that you and I have gone over a little bit in terms of just, some broader topics I think that are interesting to people. So I think we'll dig into those. Okay.
Yeah, we last time was a different interesting topic, so hopefully this will be a different kind of interesting topic to people.
Yeah, well, listen, man, you've been at the top of the game for 20 years now, if not longer. So it's like there's so much to learn from you, and there's so much to celebrate as well. And I think that's why I love this podcast, is because we can celebrate people, we can celebrate achievement, we can learn, from the good, the bad, and everything in between, and just try and share some stories too. I think people love stories. So, in terms of just your career itself and getting into swimming and how it started for you, where were the beginnings of it?
I mean, I think back to when I was about 5 years old. One of my best friends at the time was, you know, his parents wanted him to get into swimming. So it was a matter of going with him and watching him get into a backyard swimming pool and being forced to swim. And I hated the sounds of that. It didn't look good at all. I was the kid that was outside laughing at him, pointing at him while he was struggling to swim and gasp for water. About a year or two later, I was diagnosed with asthma. Pulmonologist suggested to my parents that I actually start swimming at that point. But it wasn't something that I was really enthusiastic to do. I played soccer, cricket, rugby, tennis, field hockey, you name it. I represented my state team for soccer. I represented my state team in cricket. So I gravitated more towards team sports at that point in time and didn't like the idea of going and swimming. Nonetheless, got enrolled, swam for about 3 weeks. And that was it. It was the middle of winter in South Africa, and I just didn't want to be in the water. It was a small pool, really cold water. I just remember the smell of that chlorine, and that was it. I just wanted to go be a part of sports teams. It was just the worst thing in the whole wide world to me. And when I went to high school, and I remember there's a pivotal moment. I was, in South Africa, you have houses. So if anybody's ever watched Harry Potter, the way they're broken into their houses, we have inner house sports. Sort of like they had the inner house Quidditch, we have inner house swimming, inner house track, inner house rugby, whatever it is. And I was tasked to swim the 50 butterfly. There were short course meters, shallow pool, and dove in, turned, came off the wall, and I just couldn't swim butterfly anymore. So I put my feet down, and I ended up walking the rest of the way for my first ever 50 butterfly. And that was embarrassing because I didn't know how to do it and wasn't able to complete it, and people were laughing at me. But it was a year later that a really, really cute girl ended up coming to my high school. She was a year below me or a grade below me, and she was on the swim team. And being the shy guy that I was at that point in time, and I think most people may have just gone and said, "Hey, I'm so-and-so, would you like to go on a date?" I had this elaborate plan. I was going to start swimming. I was going to show how good I was as a swimmer. And then we would go on a date, and, I'd win her over, and it would be love kind of thing. And it sort of happened that way. Started swimming, swam for several months. We started dating, only ended up dating for 3 months. Her family got transferred out of the city. But there was something then in swimming that I found that I loved and identified. And it was something that I continued to work on, really, really hard until still continue to.
That's a good story, man. Fell in love with a girl and the pool at the same time. That's good. But, one of my coaches, David Marsh, talks about athleticism a lot. And he was one of the first swim coaches, many years ago to try and produce swimmers to be athletes, and as the years have gone on, we've started to specialize more and more. We seem to be getting away from that. Parents are wanting to push their kids into swimming earlier and get them to pick a stroke, pick a distance, at a very young age. And I've had some conversations recently with some other people on the podcast who have said that their parents didn't do that. So that's a good thing. But in terms of athleticism, I think when I think of somebody that is an athlete, I think of you. You were one of those guys that came in at a younger age, 19, 20, and you could tell immediately this person was athletic. This person was good. They could jump, I'm talking about you could jump, you could, you just look like you could kick a soccer ball from, the 50-yard line, or you could dunk a basketball or whatever it was, like you could just tell. So I think you were kind of the first breed of this pure athlete that came into swimming and could do a lot of things. And so we kind of built our system around that theory, that method of being a total athlete and trying to become better at certain things. And I saw those things in you, that I just wanted to mention that. But in terms of, your growth through South Africa, and then how did you end up deciding to go to America and swim in America?
First and foremost, I want to just thank you for acknowledging that and seeing that. It was something that was always important to me. I think by virtue of the fact that I'd just done so many other sports and competed across the board, I was athletic. So, the beautiful thing is my parents, if I was a kid when I was a kid and I started a sport, my parents wanted me to be committed to that sport for the season. It wasn't a question of starting something and then stopping something. And I just loved being at school and doing sports. It was just something that, really resonated within me. So it didn't matter what it was, as long as I was competing, as long as I was getting out there and practicing, playing, whatever it might be. And one of my coaches, so my high school coach, Gavin Ross, he currently lives in the States, was instrumental in sort of that journey. There are very few coaches in South Africa that have this idea that I'm going to prepare you as best as I can. I know that I have a limited capacity in my ability to coach you. And when we reach that sort of tipping point, I want you to go to a different coach. I want you to go overseas. I really want you the best for you. What you're seeing, what you have seen, what you continue to see in South Africa is these coaches that want to be on the national team. They want to be a national team coach, the head coach, an Olympic coach. And they do prepare athletes, and they can prepare them really well, but there gets to a point, that tipping point that I referenced, that it becomes to the detriment of the athlete, the detriment to the swimmer, that they continue to hold on and don't allow them to experience something else, different competitions, different training methodologies, whatever it might be. And Gavin was really instrumental in saying to me right from the beginning, I know I have a specific skill set. I think you're a great athlete. I don't know how good I can get you, but my goal is to get you to the point where you can go to the United States. And that's what he did, and just so unselfishly. And there are very few people out there that I've come across that are that unselfish in the way they work with their athletes.
Yeah. I think that look, it's a fine line. You can understand the coaches, in their home countries, and I've had this struggle with Australian coaches as well. I'm like, why are there certain kids that stay in a system where clearly, if they were given a chance in America, they could thrive and they could grow, and then other people, like a Chad Leclos, who ends up staying in the system and performing very well, and there's similar kids in Australia to that as well. So I think it's certainly a fine line, but I think there are people that would do better in each of those scenarios, and I was certainly someone like you who was always clearly going to do better by coming to America and being in a system like that. And so I'm glad I made that decision. Was that difficult for you and your family to make that decision?
No, I left 3 days after the end of high school. It's really gotten harder over time more than anything else. I think, part of that journey in trying to find the right school was difficult. I remember, I was That was pretty good. I mean, I was 24-0 in the 50 freestyle and sent a letter through to ASU and got a reply back from ASU. And they said, based on your current times, we're not going to be able to give you more than about a 15-20% scholarship. Mm. And that really broke me because I thought, I really thought I was better than what I was at that point in time. I also knew that coming from South Africa with an exchange rate as poor as it was, and with my family's financial position, I just wasn't, if I didn't get a full ride anywhere, it was going to be very, very difficult for me to go to the States.
So that's pretty common for most kids coming from South Africa too.
Exactly. And most kids coming from around the world. I mean, it's very rare that we can match the US dollar in terms of exchange rates at all.
Yeah.
But, so the journey saw me Iowa State. I got a, full ride offer from Iowa State, several other schools, but, there were two that stood out to me, Auburn and ASU. And I really wanted to go to Auburn more than anything else. That was sort of the top of my list because I'd seen the culture. For me, what I did was I'd started ordering Swimming World magazines years back because I wanted to learn about swimming, and I knew I wanted to go to the States at that point in time. So for me, who are the best teams? And then when you look at the best teams, what is the camaraderie? What is the environment? What is the culture that they've built around it? And I saw that at Auburn more than anywhere else. And as a result, and by virtue of that, I really wanted to go, and chatted with David Marsh a couple of times. And they weren't in a position to be able to give a full ride, which I completely understood because of how many good swimmers there were on the team. But I remember a message, sent in this, I just wanted to know everything. So I sent him a whole bunch of questions, and Kim Bracken, the assistant coach at that time, was, didn't reply to, or didn't forward it to him. She actually replied to me, and she's like, "Good luck answering all of these questions." So I mean, it was things like that kind of stood out, and eventually had the opportunity to pay a visit to the University of Arizona. I met up with Ryk and Rick, Frank, and I mean, aside from there being very little trees and it being a desert, there was something about Arizona that I loved and really gravitated towards. I knew there was just this innate knowing that I would be good here, that I could be, quote unquote, safe, that I'd be taken care of, that I'd be able to grow and perform. And that's sort of what made that transition for myself and for my mom and my family a lot easier, knowing that I was going to be going into a system and an environment that was going to be geared for my growth and my development and ultimately my success. So as difficult as it was to say goodbye to everybody, it was really easy knowing that I was going to be going into something that was for my benefit.
Yeah. So I have to blame Kim Bracken for us not being teammates, huh?
Yeah, exactly. We would be teammates.
Damn you, Kim. Yeah. No, that's hilarious. But so, well, you ended up going to a place where there was a bunch of South Africans. So you fit in well there anyway, I'd imagine. Was it, for me, when I came to America, it was like something completely different. All of a sudden I was part of a team, and I was around guys that were better than me, and people that would get in your face if you were doing well or if you weren't doing well. It was just like right there. Whereas in Australia, it was kind of like every man for themselves. People left you alone. And this was a completely different environment. I ate it up. I thrived. Was that similar for you?
Yes and no. It took me a little bit of time. I mean, I was so fresh off the boat, and I remember, getting into. I got in the middle of winter. So obviously, South Africa, our school years start in January and end in November, December. Flew out after that, and I remember one situation. Coffee culture wasn't big in South Africa at that point in time, and I remember after one Saturday morning workout, it was ice cold. Had the opportunity to go with the kids or my teammates to Starbucks for the very, very first time. And, there's a line of swimmers. I'm towards the back, and this person orders a caramel frappuccino with half and half. And the next person orders something that sounds even more elaborate. And not knowing anything about these coffees, it gets to me, and the lady or the gentleman says, "Hey, what would you like to drink?" And just deer in the headlights, so frozen, didn't know. I just said, would you just give me a cup of water, please? So it was a real adjustment getting into the US and learning the system and finding my level of comfort because I'd been on a really, really small team where I was sort of the big shot, it was really difficult initially. But I had people there like Coley Stickles, several of the freshmen, Peter Johnson, a whole bunch of other people that really helped sort of pull me in. And there was a family down there that sort of helped pull me in and make me feel more at home. Ryk was there in a certain capacity, just as a fellow South African, to help show me the way here and there. But it was really a tough initial adjustment period, but one that I ended up thriving in. I think their coaches there quickly realized that if they back me into a corner, you'll get me to perform. And that's something that stood with me for years and years and years. And I think that was kind of bred from an early age. My father passed away when I was 15, 16 years of age. And, at that point in time, I sort of had to focus on being the man, the quote unquote man in the family, and, taking care of myself and taking care of my family. So whenever I felt like I got backed into a corner, it was, sort of this, oh shit, best believe now I'm going to actually perform and be required to perform.
Talk to me about that a little bit, backed into a corner, because I think this about yourself, and certainly something that I've heard from the past. And I've known you for 20 years, so I've seen growth in you just as you've seen growth in me, but I think the word on the street was that you were notoriously a little bit more difficult to deal with at a younger age.
No, come on. Who said that?
Than some of the other athletes. Well, for whatever it was. I mean, you can tell me, what was your assessment of yourself? Did you have a chip on your shoulder? I mean, you just talked about it there in terms of like being backed into a corner and getting the best. What do you mean exactly?
I had a level of expectation on myself, and I had a level of expectation on the people around me. And I think it was bred from an unhealthy place, obviously. But I had, for me, it was like, I want to go to the Olympics. I want to win a gold medal. You have to match up with me. You have to match up that energy. If you're my teammates and you're around me, you've got to be the same. And if you're not having that same energy and that same intensity, well, then get the hell out of here, because I don't want to be around you.
Right.
So it was, I think it was, the intention, as harsh as it was pure. It was pure intent, because I wanted the best out of myself. I was doing the best with the abilities I had at that point in time, and my best understanding of the world at that point in time. It helped me get to great successes. It wasn't healthy. And I burnt a lot of bridge and lost a lot of friends because of that. But I expected the most out of the people around me, whether it was friends, family, teammates. And then I expected that out of myself. So I wanted to talk the talk and walk the walk. And, I had days in workout where we'd get given send-offs or given times, and I wouldn't make them, and I'd lose my shit. It wouldn't be frequent, but it'd be frequent enough for me to be really pissed off and really upset about my results or a race or a workout, that I'd take that back home for several hours, maybe several days, eventually get over it and resolve the issue. But it was something that continued to, blister and fester in many ways.
What was that from, do you think? Were you like this before you lost your father, or did losing your father have a major impact on you like that? Or, talk to me about where this came from.
I think having lost my father was a component to it. My mom and dad got separated when I was probably 6. Okay. So I think there was a lot of aggression. There was a lot of anger, having felt like I'd been let down in many ways.
Right.
So I think that sort of manifested itself on. My mom, unfortunately, dated a very, very abusive man that was very verbally, physically abusive to us. So it was something that I think it showed me or revealed to me a person's nature and capacity. And I sort of took that on at a point. I became angry. I became aggressive. Why did somebody stand up for me? So it became taking this weight of the world on my shoulders kind of thing. And always, I just remember, how abusive he could be and how I would feel backed into a corner, and I wasn't able to fight. You're an 8-year-old kid, and there's a 45-year-old man or 40-year-old man trying to wailing on you. Like, what do? You can't do anything. So I think it just put me to a place where, as I got older and I found myself, in situations where I could fight back, like swimming, I could fight back because that was a talent that I had. So I would fight back by trying to get a better result, by having the people around me, trying to be up their level, bring their best game. So I definitely think that there are significant root causes for that. Obviously, at that point in time in my life, I didn't have the capacity to deal with it, or didn't necessarily have the tools to deal with it. But as time has gone on, and there's been an acceptance of all of this, and an understanding that, that dude was also just human. I think it's bred a lot more compassion and empathy for myself, people in that situation, and definitely added to the way I look at things now.
Yeah, it must feel good to be able to talk about this now, verbalize it, and contextualize it, understand it, for sure. Was that impossible for you back then? Was that just too difficult to really even understand for yourself? Or was more of like you were just in the moment and you were living, and like you said, you burned some bridges along the way, unintentionally, I'm sure, but is that something that was very difficult to verbalize back then?
I believe so. You feel a certain amount of shame if somebody's been, you've been beaten up several times by an adult. It's just my mom knew, my dad knew, but you don't want to tell anybody else. Yeah. You don't want to tell the friends around you. And obviously that hadn't, that was when I was 13 or 14 and never since, kind of thing. But, as you get to the ages of 19 or 18, 19, 20, I might not have known why, I had that aggression, that anger, that level of frustration. So without knowing the root cause, now I can obviously look back and have a clearer understanding of it. But, in college, I was very difficult to deal with. I was very, very difficult to coach. I always had my opinions. I always had my thoughts, understandings. I was always researching. I remember going and swimming with Mike Bottom and Anthony and those guys at the race club in 2001. And just because I've always had this thirst for knowledge, I want to understand myself. I want to understand the body. I want to understand swimming, playing golf. I want to understand everything about it. So I went out for the summer to train with Mike Bottom at Cal and Berkeley. And I remember just like loving the environment, loving the camaraderie, seeing what I had not been to the athletes around me, seeing, how Mike coached. And it was really revealing for me in so many ways that this was something that I was not doing and that I wasn't helping foster. And the beautiful thing about being there with Mike and Nort was every single day, like Nort would come out with a stack of articles or a article or a motivational piece. And I got back to Arizona after that summer with a stack of articles and things about swimming and mental, just like mental preparation training. And I gave it to Frank and I was so excited. I was like, Frank, this is what we did here in Cal. It's just amazing. Maybe if you read through this, there might be some insights for you. And he took the stack and, he threw it in the trash can next to him. He says, Roland Schoeman, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I got it. I understood it. But there was a level of frustration there because it's just like, these guys have been beating us year in and year out. They're producing sprinters and athletes that are great. And there's two coaches there that are, some of the best coaches of the world. Why wouldn't you want to learn? Just read through it. You're right. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but read through it. And there was a level of frustration in the fact that he wasn't willing to do that. And, there were, a couple more pivotal moments where I got to be really lazy. I would bitch and moan, complain. I wouldn't want to do sets. And that wasn't who I wanted to be. And Frank, it was after 2003 World Champs. Frank Busch sat down with me because I'd had an awful World Championships. I swam off for first reserve. Time that I went to swim off for first reserve would have seeded me third going into semifinals. So that was tough in and of itself. But got back to Tucson. Frank sat me down. He said, hey, Roland, you know what? I love you. You've been an amazing asset to the swimming program. But if you're not going to change your attitude, if you're not going to change the way you see things, look at things, work out, we don't want you bitching and moaning. We don't want you complaining. You need to buy into this. If you're not willing to buy into this program, then unfortunately, we're going to have to see you go. And it was one of the realest, most difficult conversations anybody had ever had with me. And I was in tears and really disappointed, like how dare he sort of attitude. But I intrinsically knew that he was right.
Mm.
And I spent about 20, 30 minutes, just sort of crying and thinking about things, and went down to the locker room, got my suit on, went back up to the pool deck. I said, Frank, you're right. I'm ready. Let's do this. And it was, and obviously after that, there were still moments where, I bitched and moaned, but for me, it was, okay, well, this was my commitment, and let's see more of the positive behavior versus the negative behavior. Right. And Frank and I and Ryk and I, we had conversations a lot about that, because there were still moments where that old attitude, the bitching and moaning would creep in, but knowing that the goal obviously was to be my better self at that point in time. We try to take that into consideration as often as possible. But one of the most difficult conversations anybody's ever had with me, but definitely one of the most impactful and needed ones at that point in time.
Well, it seems like it, because, I mean, you're obviously super talented. You came into the NCAA in '99, and we're talking about 2003 here. And you've had success in those years. You've gone to the Sydney Olympics, and you've gone to World Championships, and I'm sure you went to, well, we had our own experience at the 2002 Commonwealth Games. we can talk about that. But you obviously weren't fully maximizing your talent at that point. And that wasn't until 2004, 2005, which is after this conversation, clearly, where you start to really dominate the world of swimming and make an impact, breaking world records left and right. So we can talk about that. But I do want to touch on the incident we had. We had this interesting rivalry, you and I, and I've talked about this before, where you were just one of those guys that I could never beat for some reason. It doesn't matter what, if I was swimming really fast, you were swimming a little faster. If I was swimming terrible, you're swimming a little bit better than terrible.
A little less terrible.
Yeah. It was always like 100th of a second. So in '99, I just looked it up. You beat me by 100th of a second in the 50 freestyle at the NCAA championships. And then 2002, we had an interesting moment where at the Commonwealth Games, some of our listeners might not realize how big the Commonwealth Games is, but for Australians and South Africans, it's right up there with the Olympics almost. And so it was a huge event for me, and I was in exceptional form at that point in time. And I was racing you. You and I were kind of rivals and competitors. And I knew that if I was going to win, I had to get past you. And we had this moment in the ready room that you and I kind of shared together. You had your perspective on it. I have my perspective on it. But just from your perspective, what happened in the ready room in 2002?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, like you say, it was you, myself, and Mark Foster were really the three top guys in that 50 freestyle. And I remember being in this ready room. We, as South Africans, we didn't have bodysuits yet. We weren't given any of this full suits or half suits. And I remember you having this beautiful Australian, the blue with the green stitching and the cross on it and everything, or the stars. But I remember you getting zipped up. You were looking at me, and I think Ashley Callis was behind you, zipping you up. And you could see the zip, and then the zip popped off. Yeah. And Callis's eyes were this big, like he'd done something terribly wrong. You didn't know exactly in that second what it was. And then he started explaining to you what was going on. And then there was this mini freak out, like this, from my perspective, it looked like there was a stress, and so you got that suit off as quick as you can, hopped into a brief. I think you were butt naked in front of all of us, getting this jammer on as quick as you could. Get the jammer on, so everything's good, calm down. And just as we were about to start walking out, so just as we were walking out for the 50 free final, you put your goggles on and your goggles snap open. And you have to now run back and get another pair. And it was just almost like a comedy of errors. You couldn't have scripted it, and just like, I didn't know what to think. It's just like, oh no, this is awful. But for you to still come back and swim as well as you did, I mean, that was testament to you and your mental strength and fortitude that you were always in that race.
Well, I think looking back, I think it's one of those moments where you put so much pressure on yourself because, that could be a life-changing moment for you. And you're thinking about this. Like I was thinking about it subconsciously, like this could change your life, for us, as like I said, this is a big event, and it's, live on television back in Australia. And if I become Commonwealth champion in the 50 freestyle, then I can make money from this. I could get celebrity from it. I could become somebody that, could earn a living from swimming. And at the time I had a child, Kira was young. And so it was life-changing in that sense. So I was thinking to myself that when you shouldn't be thinking those things, And so when that zipper popped, it certainly wasn't, any of my doing, but I guess there was a nervous energy that came with that of like, oh shit, like I've got to get this suit off. So I remember stripping it off, running around naked in the ready room and just bending over and look. I couldn't find my bag. I was so stressed. I couldn't find my bag. So all the bags looked the same, they're all Australian bags. So I'm bending over in front of everybody and looking for a suit, butt naked, find one, put it on. And then I guess it was difficult for me to, calm down at that stage. So as I put my goggles on, my hands are shaking a little bit, and snap, the goggles pop. And I just remember the lady at the front saying, "We can't wait. We've got to go. It's live on television." So I remember you guys leaving, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to miss this race. And it was at the parade. You had to walk all the way down to the other end of the pool.
Right.
And I just remember thinking to myself, like, oh, I'm done. Like, this is ridiculous. It's over. Anyway, I find a pair of goggles and I run down to the other end. And just as I get to the other end, they introduce me. And I remember thinking to myself, like, all right, take an inventory here. And I put my hand up on my neck, and it was just like my pulse was 200, just. And I thought, well, the only way I can compete now is if I take a few deep breaths and just try and relax within the next 30 seconds. And that's what I did. And so I felt pretty good, but the 50 freestyle is one of those races where I held my breath the whole way. I'm sure you did too. And so I remember getting out to the lead and feeling pretty good, but I remember seeing you right next to me. And then the lack of oxygen started to seep in. And I remember just you and I going head to head, just stroke for stroke. And I stretched out and I could just see your fingertips just in front of me. And you won the gold medal by 100th of a second. And look, I don't have any regrets, but there's certainly lessons learned in that, in terms of it helped me become a better coach, honestly, in terms of keeping people calm under pressure. And but yeah, it was a crazy situation. That was kind of our careers, back and forward like that. We ended up having a similar experience in Athens in 2004, where you're the fastest qualifier for the final in lane 4, and I was the second fastest qualifier in lane 5. We went head to head a lot, but in terms of your career, you certainly 2004 was a big deal for you, where you really broke out at that meet. But I've also heard you talk about the disappointment as well. So you have, you do win Olympic gold in the relay for South Africa and have this incredible moment as a country and as a team and as an individual there. But then you felt a huge disappointment in not fulfilling your own individual destiny of winning Olympic gold, even though you won medals at that meet. So talk to me about 2004 a little bit.
I think, if you'd spoken to me a week before the Olympics and said, I guarantee you walk away with from this Olympics with a gold, a silver, and a bronze. You win the relay, you break a world record, you win silver in the 100 and bronze in the 50. Would you be a happy man? And I would have said to you, oh my gosh, that's like a dream come true. But I think then having swam that relay and led off in a 48-1 and being as fast as I was, I think that had me. I believe that set me up for winning gold in the 100 and definitely winning gold in the 50 because of how good my start was at that point in time. I knew there was nobody in the world that could touch me in terms of the start. So I think that's where a level of disappointment comes from. In the 100, it was, we always knew that Peter was going to charge. We always knew. But unfortunately, Ryk and I, Frank and I, we'd never discussed, what do I do? What will you do when that happens? Because it's not if it happens. what is your strategy going to be when Peter comes swimming up towards you? We never dealt with that. So there wasn't ever anything that was discussed or a strategy in place. Something obviously I could have done on my own, but it was never something that the coaches and I discussed. And I think that was detrimental because, I knew it was going to happen. And yet when it did happen, there was a level of a loss of focus. And as you know, if you're in a race, and if a lot of viewers and listeners will know that, if you're in a race and you lose that focus for that 1 second, all of a sudden it becomes an external focus point. Trying to get back into it takes a couple of seconds. And I believe that's sort of where I lost the race. Had I had the understanding, had I had maybe the lessons of, it's going to come, he's going to come up on your right-hand side. When that happens, let's have a contingency. I want you to focus on this, and not even say instead of this. I want you to focus on your breathing. I want you to focus on, in those few moments, work on your body alignment, whatever it is. Just having, empowered me with the right tools and the strategies. And, for the longest time I saw it as I lost gold. And not that I'd won silver. And it was a huge sense of loss within me. And part of that was because I was seeing my value in the world and as an athlete, as, the medals. If you don't win gold medal, you're not going to be as famous. You're not going to make as much money. You're not going to be, you're not going to go down in history as an Olympic gold medalist. Nobody really remembers the first and second and third place finishers, but everybody remembers the gold medal. All these cliches that, I'd been told in my life and that you start to believe. And I remember walking around the village that night, just so disappointed, so, aggravated, sad that I'd lost the gold medal, and it was just, I was just doing the best I could with the tools that I had at that point in time. It wasn't for the best, or it wasn't the best for me to think that way. But then again, as I came back and I refocused. I was like, oh, all right, you know what? F this. Okay, I didn't win the gold, but we didn't expect me to win gold in the 100. That's sort of an added bonus. 50 is my jam. I'm going to win the 50 now because I know my start's better than anybody else's. I know my first 35 meters is better than anybody else's in the world. Mm-hmm. So best believe that I'm going to utilize that. And sort of refocused. And once again, I'd say I had put myself in a corner, managed to bounce back out of it. And remember getting ready for the 50 free, and prelims felt amazing. Semifinals felt amazing. And then because I wanted that race so bad in finals, there wasn't that same level of relaxation that I had experienced on the starts previously, especially not in the 100 freestyle final. I know if I'd had the same start that I'd had in the 100 freestyle final, in the 50, I would have won that race. But I was so amped up. I was so aggressive. And when I pulled on that block, I yanked myself straight down instead of out to have a good start, and spent way too much time underwater. And at that point in time, I came up with everybody else, or just slightly ahead, and was just trying to stay ahead of the people around me. And I didn't. And that's also right.
Dude, you came up ahead of me. I know that. You smoked me on that start. Didn't matter what you did. You always smoked me on that start. I just didn't. I wasn't athletic like you, and I didn't have that underwater dolphin kick. You had a killer. Your entry was clean, and your kick was just so good at that time. It was just nothing I could do to come close. I had to try and figure out how to make it up in the swim. But Gary Hall Jr. said something interesting. When I interviewed him, he felt like you were the man to beat in that one. And he said he had something in his toolkit in terms of what he was going to say to you to try and get in your head. But he said he felt like he didn't need to say it. Did you notice something about yourself in the ready room? Like, I'm sure you just kind of touched on it there, where you were just probably over aggressive, like over wanting it. Would you change anything about that situation?
I think remembering back, I was pretty calm and pretty focused in the ready room. I think I had the switch where in the ready room, I could still be slightly playful depending on the situation. Like, we were super playful in the relay ready room. Mm-hmm. I was standing in front of the TV, and I guess Alex Popov was sitting behind me trying to watch TV, and he said, "Hey, Roland, is your dad a glass maker?" Obviously meaning, I'm not transparent. So I said, "You know my dad? That's amazing." So just not feeding into it, just being playful. So remembering back to the Athens Radium for the 50, I think there was still a component of that. Obviously a little bit more pressure, a little bit more wanting, but I felt like once we were, led out to our blocks, there was a switch that flipped, and standing there. I mean, I've watched the video, just standing there behind the video, and in my face it's a strong face. It's just like, this is my race. I'm going to go get this race. And I heard the comments that Gary said, and I mean, it's fortunate that he didn't say what he did, but also I think, my dad had been a motivation for me for so long. I mean, he passed, and 2 days later, I swam my best ever 50 freestyle time to qualify for my first South African trials meet. So it's, I mean, I feel flattered that he felt that I was, one of the ones to beat. They've always had a huge amount of respect for Gary and his family, and stayed at their house many times in Phoenix. So it's, it feels honored to be considered in that same vein as people he's watching out for or thinks may in fact beat him.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't figure it out. I mean, he just had a way of getting his hand on the wall. That's for sure. I don't know. He did it back to back, and he beat us both times. But your huge breakout year, if you could say that, after winning an Olympic gold medal. But I mean, 2005, you were just on fire. What was so special about 2005 in Montreal? Actually, I had an incident. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I was sitting in the grandstand in Montreal, and you had swum the 50 fly. Have I told you the story?
No, I don't think so.
And I was sitting with the Australian team. We're watching the 50 fly, and you do what you did. Did you break the world record in the final?
The semis and the finals, yeah.
Yeah, so we're watching the final, and obviously but in the final you break the world record. And I remember one of the coaches, Shannon Rowlandson, turned around to everybody and was like, wow, he's going to smash the 50 freestyle. And I looked at him, I was like, you mother. I was like, really? I got to race that guy in a few days, and that's what you're telling me? Thanks a lot. So, but yeah, you looked incredible. That mean you just looked like everything was on. So what was so special about that year for you?
It was once again straight after Athens. I wanted it more. I felt like I'd let myself down. I felt like I'd let my country down. I felt like I'd let my teammates down. So it was, obviously I hadn't. And everybody was really, really proud of me, but I had this idea and this belief that now I backed myself into a corner again. So it was as soon as I got back to Tucson, I went straight into training as hard as I could, trying to be stronger than I ever could, trying to swim faster than I ever could, try to be more flexible than I ever was. And it worked really well. I think I was training really well. It was just training blocks, being able to put in great blocks of training, not being lazy, pushing myself, being a good teammate to others, and in turn having them be good to me and help push me to greater success. And the
staying healthy as well, I guess.
Yeah, staying healthy. I'd had a really bad shoulder injury in 2001, and from 2001 on, I've always been really healthy. I haven't struggled with too many injuries at all since then. So it was exactly like you said, it's a question of being healthy and injury free. Those are huge, astronomically important in that specific journey. And then the summer of 2005, Ryk Neethling actually had taken the summer off, and Frank was my coach, and Frank obviously knows what he's doing. Had a really good summer's worth of preparation, and hadn't traditionally been a 50 butterfly long course before that World Championships. The 50 fly for me was a pet event, an opportunity to race. We did not expect me to win a medal at all. The hope was just to get a few swims in and sort of just warm me up for the meet and warm me up for the 100 freestyle and the 50 freestyle, and dove in the morning, and something just clicked in my fly and I swam really fast. And I said, man, I just missed the world record. And then being able to go and break it in semifinals, and then to be the first man to break 23 seconds in the final was like, gee whiz, this is what I'm talking about. Now everything's starting to come together a little bit. So it's really, really exciting for me. And it's just that sort of that confidence continued to breed more confidence and more relaxation. I'd always been a very much a cerebral and very feeling based swimmer. If I felt really, really good in the water, I could swim really, really fast. If I felt awful, it was slightly more difficult to swim fast, but there were obviously times in my career that I had. But for me, what I really, really wanted was to feel good. Because then it was just like the snowball effect, because then I knew everything else was going to come around.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a super year, man. You just looked incredible. You looked untouchable, really. It didn't look like anybody could come close to the way that you were swimming. You really revolutionized sprinting. It's just like, wow, I didn't realize somebody could swim that fast and look that good. So it was pretty incredible. I mean, you've had such a long career, and as you were talking, I was just thinking about all the people that you've swum against. From Popov at his best, to the current swimmers. I mean, you've swum against Caleb Dressel as well. I mean, you've raced everybody in between. So in terms of rivals for you and people that brought out the best in you, or people that were difficult for you to beat, or tell me about that. Did you have rivals in your own mind?
I think the biggest rivalry I probably ever had was with Ryk, Ryk Neethling. Him and I, being both from South Africa, he swam distance events like everybody knows, and started migrating from the 1,500 and 400 down to the 50 and the 100, and was really successful with that. In 2004, 2003, 2004, we were number 1 and 2 in South Africa, and we kept on racing each other. And I hated the fact that he was swimming my event, that he was wanting to beat me now, and he hated the fact that I was faster than him. And it's we're both good friends, but it's this level of competition that I know that you saw with somebody like Caesar and Fred. Ultimately, that competition drives you to find a way to be better. And it really did, day in and day out. It's not even a question of Ryk and I would see each other at international meets and push each other there. Like, we would see each other in training every single day. Ryk, what did he go? Okay, I know I got to go faster than that. Doing stand-ups, whatever it was in the weight room, he was always way stronger than me, but that forced me to try and be stronger than him, to find ways to be faster than him, to start controlling the things that I could. He's better than me in this way, shape, or form. Now, how can I be better than him? All right, well, I need to work on my explosiveness, because that's naturally where I'm better. So it was a little question of trying to find ways within my own capacity that I could get better and improve upon, knowing that I was never going to be Ryk, but the goal was always to beat Ryk. So that was probably one of the biggest rivalries we've ever had. And I'm trying to, other people, man, it's just, everybody was a rival to some capacity.
Yeah.
And it was bad rivalries in the sense that, I hated losing. I was a sore loser. And it was, just because I was, there's no excuse for it. It's just, I hated losing, but I used that going forward. And I think one of the things that's helped me over time is being okay with finishing second, understanding that my value wasn't in finishing third or second or even first. It was, people remember those that have impacted their lives. And I never wanted to go down as a swimmer that, remember that guy? He was just a piece of, trash, and he was just always negative and always angry, because I've experienced that at Arizona, the swimmers that were that, because that's how they're remembered now, unfortunately. And I'm sure the same with you at Auburn and where you've coached and your experiences. There are just those athletes that are not fun to be around.
Yeah. Tell me this, why have you swum for so long? Why have you decided to swim for such an extended period of time, from early 2000 all the way up to, recently? That's difficult. I mean, I remember for me, there was a point in time where I wasn't injured, but I just felt like I got to the point where I had squeezed everything out of myself. Did you never get to that point, or why have you continued to swim, in your own words?
I think the basic of it all is that I love swimming. That's the reality. Is I started off as a swimmer. I hated it, fell in love with a girl, and fell in love with swimming. And swimming was always my choice. Everything that I've been granted in my life in terms of sports and the things I do has been my choice. Nothing's ever been forced upon me. And swimming was something that I continued to choose because swimming helped me with my growth. Swimming helped me with my development. And I felt that was the critical thing, was because the lessons that I was needing to learn in life were all being brought to me in the terms of swimming. If Frank hadn't had that conversation with me, I would not have, I would have not have grown exponentially in that. Losing medals, quote unquote, winning, going through all these experiences has been this beautiful, symphony of growth and learning. And I've found no other place in my life that has continually facilitated this amount of growth and development. Ryk as well had this beautiful quote years and years ago that just said, to win is to be the best in the history of your body. For me, I still want to be the best in the history of my body, whatever that looks like. And that's why I've always been committed to this development, this growth. It's like when I wanted to have the best start in the world years and years and years ago, I bought VHS videos from the US. I bought a camcorder to record myself doing thousands and thousands of starts. I bought the Swimming World magazine because I wanted to, read articles and see what everybody else was doing. And it's never changed. I've always got cameras out, video recording, reading articles, watching videos, just trying to understand things better. I just have this thirst for knowledge that I just want to have, that's not being quenched. And it's great because it's helping me grow. It's helping me stay on top of things. And I think there's what I've seen from a lot of people around me is that, you finish college. It's like, but now it's time to get a job. Based on what? Okay, based on conventional knowledge. That's awesome. If you're not in a position where you can carry on swimming, I get it. I have lots of friends that retired straight after college. But then you find these people getting into their mid-20s, 30s, 35, and they're using their age as a crux. But I'm 30. I'm too old right now. Well, no, you're not. That's your belief that you are. That's sort of your hindrance. And obviously I know there'll be a time in everybody's life where they're just not capable of doing the things that they used to do, but you're no longer the same person. So for me, it's like this continual development. I'm not the same person I was a year ago or 5 years ago, or even a day ago, because of the amount of cells that we have, regenerate and die on a day-to-day basis. We're literally a different person every single day. So for me, the goal is still growth, development. What are all these lessons that I'm going to go through that are going to help me and help the people around me? Maybe all these lessons in my life has led me to this minute right here with you to be able to convey these messages. And maybe there's somebody out there that just gains one small piece of wisdom from this conversation. I don't know, but for me, it's about long-term development. I don't want to ever do something for 5 years. I want to be committed to something that I'm passionate about and that I love. And swimming has been it for the longest time, and swimming will continue to be a passion and a love of mine for the rest of my life. So why not commit everything to it? I don't want to sit on my deathbed one day and be like, man, I should have done more. I should have tried harder, because I went through a period in my life where I didn't try as hard as I should have, and that's not something I ever want to do with or deal with or experience again in terms of swimming or anything else in my life.
If you could write a book on your career, what do you think you'd call it?
The initial thinking was my own worst enemy, because I was my own worst enemy. When I got silver in NCAAs or at the Olympics, I was berating myself. I was calling myself the worst things in the world. Let's put it this way: if you said what I did to myself to anybody out on the street, you'd probably get beat up really, really badly. And it was okay in my eyes to speak to myself that way, but never anybody else. But I think the evolution is, I'm not sure at this point in time. It's my own, maybe something along the lines of just my own best friend, because at the end of the day, I've come to understand that if you're not comfortable in your own shoes, if you're not comfortable within yourself, no amount of searching for that around you in gold medals, money, fame is going to help satisfy you.
What do you think you're going to do when the swimming's completely done?
It's never going to be completely done.
Masters, eh?
I'm going to swim until I'm 147, Brett.
Okay, well.
And then I'm going to challenge you and try beat you by 100th of a second.
I don't know how you do it, man. I can't get into those cold pools anymore, man. They're not for me. But I mean, beyond obviously traveling the world and competing at the highest level, what's next for you?
Yeah, still doing a lot of fitter, faster clinics. Loving those. Loving the fact that we get to be mentors and give back.
Yeah.
I think that was something that I felt I didn't have growing up.
Yep.
And now we get to be that for others, helping them with their starts, their turns, their development, their psychology, just the way they think about things has been beautiful when you see several kids just have those aha moments where something clicks and they look at things completely differently. I am executive director for a South African chili oil company that's in the States right now. Studying for my real estate exam, certified breathwork practitioner for Oxygen Advantage, and certified breathwork practitioner for XPT. So doing a real deep dive into, understanding the body, continuing to understand the body through breathwork and, various other avenues at this point in time. So it's all about growth, possibly looking at studying an MBA as well and getting into the big wide world of business.
Good stuff, man. Well, listen, you've had so many experiences swimming. I do think you need to attack that book. I think you need to put pen to paper and write a story, because you've
appreciate that.
Like I said, you've been there for, you've been at the top for 20 years. You've raced everybody. You've traveled the world multiple times. I mean, you've had so many incredible experiences. You've conversed with the best coaches, the best athletes. I mean, so there's got to be some great stories and great lessons learned. And I think, as you said, the growth that you've experienced has been pretty phenomenal. And I think certainly worth a read. So I'd like to read it. So
you'll be the first copy.
I appreciate it, man. Listen, thanks for doing this again. I'm glad we got to go over your career, and it's been incredible to watch. So appreciate this.
Thank you for what you do, Brett. I mean, being able to provide a platform like this for people to be able to be honest and open and sincere, and hopefully others out there I know others out there are gaining a lot from this. So we appreciate you being able to provide this platform for us.
Yeah, thanks, man. That's very humbling. So thanks a lot. I appreciate you saying that.
So welcome.
All right, buddy. Take care. I'll see you at the next clinic. All right.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon.
Bye, man.
Cheers.